What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Marketing Nomad Show. It's your favorite marketer and podcast host. My name is Prit. Now, today I have Pete Mohr with us, who is an entrepreneurial business coach. Pete, how are we doing today?
Awesome day so far. It's the day's early and I'm ready to roll. So excited to be here with you, Prit. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Now, today we've got a very, very exciting episode for you. Today, Pete is going to talk a little bit about dealing with overwhelm and frustration as a business owner and how to avoid or even minimize it. So today's episode is definitely for you if you've been really frustrated or anxious or just, overwhelmed with your business. I'm sure Pete has a ton of tips for you today. All right, Pete, let's get into today's podcast episode. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, Prit, I've been an entrepreneur pretty much all my life. And it's something that I've always done, way back to, my early teens, starting little businesses and stuff like that. I went to business school. I've got a couple of business degrees and, coming out of business school the first time, I worked for my dad's best friend for about 6 months and really, great business, loved working with Peter. But at the same time, his name was Peter too. At the same time, I decided, you know what, I think I need to go out on my own. I think I need to make my own destiny and, make my own things happen. So I did. And I've never really looked back, Britt. It's been something, I've owned several businesses. That was almost 28 years ago. I've owned several businesses along the way. I've had franchises. I've had service businesses. I've helped people buy and sell businesses as a business broker, which is how I found a business that I currently own, which are shoe stores. We own a couple of shoe stores here in Canada. And from that perspective, I still run and operate those shoe stores. And we have a couple of other little side businesses that have been on hiatus, quite honestly, because of COVID. They're more pop-up type businesses. And just because of the frustrations, let's call it, of COVID, we haven't been able to operate those in the last couple of years, but hopefully we'll get those back going again once things open up a bit more. And I also, of course, I'm a business coach and helping other people turn their frustrations into freedoms and, help them clarify some of the things. Like you said off the bat, a lot of business owners are overwhelmed and frustrated. And, they've been in business, whether they've been in business for 10 months or 10 years, they look back and they're like, oh my gosh, what just happened here? I've been just in the books or at the desk or whatever the case is and pounding off these 10, 12, 15-hour days and all of this sort of stuff. So, there are ways around that. And do you have to put in your time? Yes, you do, at the beginning in particular. But after that, setting up some things that start to alleviate some of those pressures and give you back your freedom, because almost everybody gets into business for one reason. They want to create a better future, their better future. And what we're trying to do, at least at the beginning, you're thinking about it and saying, my business, if I run my business right, it's going to give me a better future. And from that perspective, if you don't sort of step back out of that a little bit every now and then and understand what your true future is and what you truly want as the business owner, then it's very hard to craft the business underneath it to give that back to you. And I think that's sort of because we just get mired down in this sort of, we're working. We don't sort of step back and understand what it is that we truly wanted when we first got into business and why we're crafting the business that we're crafting in order to deliver that back so we live a better life as the owner of the business, right?
I think you hit a really important point there, Pete. I think as a business owner myself, when I first started out, I had pretty clear vision of why I wanted to start my own business. And that was to give myself, the freedom to travel and start my own business. And I was pretty clear when I started out. But as I got into starting my business and running it and, setting up things and stuff like that, it was always the next goal to hit, the next target to hit, or the next thing to do on my list, or if something's going wrong, how to fix it. If something's going right, how to keep going right. And I think somewhere along the line, and it's very true, I did lose focus of my end goal because I was just so invested in just fixing what was going on. And yes, absolutely, the overwhelm, the frustration, all of that does come into play, especially when you're in it before you start your business, you can have your goals, but when you're in it, I think that it helps to be reminded of what your end goal is, to take a
Yeah.
pause and to, remind yourself that, hey, the reason why I'm doing this is so that I can get freedom at some point, or, financial freedom or independence or whatever, your specific reasons may be. And I think that, when you say it's important to realize that, and not just rush into, the business as well, I think that's super, super important. And let's talk a little bit about, overwhelm and frustration. I know we've touched a little bit about that, but what are your thoughts? I mean, I think that it's a natural process. People, as a business owner, you will get overwhelmed, you will get frustrated, and it does come at a cost. What has, overwhelm and frustration costed you in your journey?
Well, I mean, it can cost a lot of different things. And as the entrepreneur, what it costs is it costs your freedom. It costs the freedom of choosing who you want to be with, your relationships. It can cost the time freedom of your family, your marriage, your friends, those that are most near and dear to you. It can cost the missing of your kids' swim meet or hockey game or whatever the case is, right? Because you're focused on your business instead of what may be more important to you. And maybe your business is more important to you than your family. I mean, everybody has different things, but for my case, I look back at I've got 3 boys. I look back at some of our early childhood, and I did miss some of that stuff because I was so focused on thinking that my business was the only way to create a better life for my kids and all this other stuff. But really, at that stage of life, my kids wanted me more present than they wanted, a bigger house or whatever, some of the luxuries of life, let's call it. And so, I look at relationships. It can cost a variety of different things, but usually it can cost health issues. Okay. And, I believe that from, there's an old adage basically that I first heard from Joe Polish, and it goes like this: the person that has their health has 1,000 dreams, and the person that does not has but one. So in other words, if you're feeling healthy, life is good. You've got all these dreams, everything's going well, you're mentally healthy, you're physically healthy, things are good, right? But if you're not feeling healthy, you only have one dream, and that is to get healthy again. Because that if you're not healthy, you can't do anything. And if you're not healthy, you can't lead a business properly. And that means getting the right sleep. That means getting, the right food intake, getting all of those different things so that you're physically and mentally healthy so that you can lead properly. So it can cost your health, the freedom of health, the freedom of relationships, the freedom of a lot of these different things, of growth in the area that you may want to growth that not necessarily within your business, but if you're, there's only so much time in a day. So if you're spending all your time to grow your business, then you're missing out in some of these other areas, whether it's spirituality, whether it's your health or your other relationships, or all the different things where you can spend time. Those are the areas that tend to get neglected, Prit. And it's unfortunate. And so stepping back sometimes, I've developed a tool called the one-page planner. Happy to share it with any of your guests as well. But basically, when I'm coaching, we start off with that. I'm coaching the leaders of the businesses, and we start off with understanding, what do you want out of your health? What do you want out of your wealth? What do you want out of your relationships and growth and all of these different things? We write that down, and then we craft it into a life plan so that we're starting to develop your business to actually deliver it back to you. And that's where everything starts, because I work with the owners of the businesses. So you can now actually, as the owner of the business, you can actually craft that. And you can't craft it overnight or even in a week, but you can start planning it. And then when you're starting to plan, that development starts to happen. And over a period of time, sometimes months, sometimes years, but basically depending on how big the plan is, you're rolling out this plan so that eventually you can create that life that you want to live and create less frustration and create more time, because everybody wants more time, more freedom, and more profit, essentially, so that they can buy back other people's time in order to live the life that they want to live.
I definitely, resonated with a lot of points that you mentioned over there. I think that one of my eternal struggles personally is balancing life and work. I think that as a business owner, because we are so passionate, we are innately so passionate about what we do. It's on our minds 24/7. Like I could be, reading a book about something else, or talking to my mom, but it will still be running at the back of my mind. It doesn't switch off. And I think that has definitely costed me my health at some points, whether it is mental or physical health. Definitely affected my relationships. I think I recently spoke about this. I think that we need to have conversations about this, how being a business owner does affect the relationships that you have, with whether
For
it's
sure.
friendships or the romantic relationships, or even your spouse and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I did talk about this because there are so many missed meetups in my life that in the last 2 years my friends would have come by and I said, no, I can't come out to party, because I have something to do.
Exactly.
There's so many missed meetups over there, and so many missed Zoom calls because of COVID. I couldn't make it because there's a crisis going on and I had to fix it. And yes, I think that when I look back today, at some point I do regret. There is regret, because I know the end goal that I'm working for, but at the same time I wonder, do I have to give up the life that I'm experiencing right now to achieve that life? And I think that's an eternal question that all business owners have. But what are your thoughts on that? Do we really have to give up the now for the then? Or I don't know any other way to
Well,
put it.
yeah. I'll give you 6 words that a friend of mine shared with me. His name is Dane Sanders. Great, interesting chap. And Dane uses these 6 words, and they aren't his, but that's where I learned it. And they are up until now. And the next set, from now on. So when you draw that line in the sand, the up until now, you can look back at what you just said. I've done this. I've missed this. I've missed the meetups. I've had to do what I had to do, and blah blah blah, or at least what you thought you had to do. When you look back and you're saying, up until now, this is what I've done, and now you can reframe it by saying, from now on, this is what I'm going to do. Understanding that you've regretted some of these things, understanding that what you've done has either for the good or bad changed things, and you may want to change those if faced with those decisions again, because from now on you have the choice to make those calls and change your forward future life. And so those 6 words, whenever you're drawing the line in the sand, and you're dealing with the now, like you framed the word now, when you're dealing with the present, you're dealing with the now. Up until now, this is how I've done it. From now on, this is how I'm going to do it, because I'm wiser, because I understand what I truly want for my future. I understand that I want better health. I understand that I want better relationships. I understand that I want a better business, and my business has to run in a different way in order for me to get what I actually want out of my life. And so those are 6 pretty powerful words.
Oh, they are. I wrote it down when you said it, and it definitely is very, very powerful. And I think that you brought up a very interesting point, that it is your choice. It is a choice. It
Totally.
absolutely, I think that really resonated very well with me, that we have a choice to say yes, we have a choice to say no, and even it might not seem like it in the moment that we have to say, that we feel like, okay, I have to say no to that because I've got something else. But at the end of the day, it's a choice that we have to consciously make, to give ourselves the time that we need, to have a life. maybe it is, spending time with your parents or spending time with your friends, giving maybe yourself that self-care time as well. It's a choice. And I think I really like that. I think it's one of the biggest
Yeah.
concerns
And
that
I
I
think,
probably
you know
have as a
what?
business owner.
As business owners, what do we do the most every day? We make decisions. That's what we do. We're always in the process of making the next decision. But you need to have full clarity of why you're making those decisions. And that to me is this big part of your business where you need to, and your life, because as entrepreneurs, we're coupled, right? We're coupled with our businesses and our lives. And from that, the full clarity of what the goal is, what your strategic direction is for your business and your life, what are all of those things around that is such an important piece of flushing out, getting full clarity within that so that you have what you need in order to give you your guiding principles for every decision that you make. And once you have those guiding principles for every decision that you make and you communicate those to your team throughout, everything gets easier.
That's amazing. I'm really enjoying this conversation because to be honest with you, Pete, these are things that really plague my mind when I'm, sitting by myself thinking or journaling as well. These are thoughts that I've actually written down and said, do I have to sacrifice the now for the then? Or if I don't sacrifice the now, then will I get the then? There's so many questions, but it's a beautiful thought that if you have guiding principles, if you can really navigate through this. And I know
For
that
sure.
some businesses, or actually most businesses, including mine, we are pretty seasonal. There are some months that it goes crazy. There are some months when it gets quiet. How do we deal with this on and off period? And how do we not get overwhelmed during the peak season?
Well, I think the biggest thing to understand is the fact that there are seasons. That's the biggest thing. I mean, it sounds kind of simple, but understanding that there are seasons. And when you're in your busy season, you may have to sacrifice a couple of suppers with your family or a couple of meetups with your friends and those kind of things. But what you need to do is when you know it's not your busy season, you need to go back after those things. And you're saying, okay, instead of just pursuing all of the other, business overwhelms and frustrations and everything, when that time allows itself, and this is the biggest problem for most entrepreneurs, they don't actually allow themselves the opportunity to go back. I call them the buckets of life. Okay. So to go back after, I may have sacrificed going to the gym for these 2 months because they're the busiest months of the year. So, but don't sacrifice after the 2 months is over. Don't let it wait 6 months and then get back into it 3 months before your busy season again. Like whatever that case is, understanding the ebbs and flows of your business is incredibly important to align all sorts of things, to align the right product and service mix, to align the right people around you, all of those different things. And when you understand that, you're setting yourself up in advance to win in those busy seasons, as opposed to just letting it happen by fate. And I think that's an important piece too, where you're understanding those ebbs and flows. It's like in footwear, in my shoe stores, we definitely have busy seasons. And the busiest season for us is the spring, as people move from, snowy weather and slushy weather into their sandals. And from that perspective, I know it's coming. It's like, okay, we're going to staff up. We're going to have all of our marketing done in advance. We're going to have a lot of this stuff done in our slow season so that when it gets ready for the busy season, all we need to do is implement. We just need to activate those things. And when we activate those things, instead of trying to think them up and do them and set them all up and everything in the midst of your busy season. So that's how you kind of use those ebbs and flows to reduce the overwhelm and the frustration, is that just that full understanding of your year, essentially, so that you're saying, okay, I've got these 2 busy months. And then again, for us, another 2 busy months at this time of year when the snow, like we're just experiencing snow here, where the snow is starting to fly. And it's like, like, okay, people are ready now. They want to get their winter boots and they need to get, they understand I can't wear my sandals anymore. So, all right, here we go. So we've got to have this stuff in place. We have to have the people in place. We have to have our marketing ready for them. We have to have all the systems that are going to allow the people to come into our stores, get what they need, leave happily so that they want to come back again. And it looks as though it's just business as normal, even though it's a crazy busy time. But for our clients, it just looks as though, hey, I got my stuff. I'm really happy. And I love Shootopia. So I'm going to come back here next time. And that's how you want the front facing of your business to look, because that's another issue, right? You need to have your clients understand that it really doesn't matter whether it's busy season or not. They can get what they need when they want it. And you're going to provide them the promise that whatever it is, whether you're selling shoes or whether you're selling coaching services or whether you're an auto mechanic, it doesn't really matter. But you're delivering a promise. What is that promise? And ensuring that you're going to deliver it in any season is an important piece of your puzzle as you pursue growth of your business.
I definitely think that you bring up a valid point, that recognizing that your business has seasons and recognizing that, which seasons are going to be the peak for you and which seasons you can focus on other things that you may have missed out during your peak season is really important. Even like as you were talking and I was looking back, it is true, regardless of whether I have a busy season or not, my customers or my clients expect something from me, expect that standard throughout the year. And I think that as a business owner, whatever peaks or seasons that you may be having on your end, you can't let the customer know that, or you can't let the client know that. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And also, I think one of the best things that entrepreneurs and business owners do as well. I think that we definitely understand that, our customers and our clients take priority and they have to feel okay regardless of which time in the year they buy from us. So I definitely understand that. And, speaking of, recognizing these seasons and setting frameworks in place where we can actually figure out, okay, this is going to be peak season. I'm going to focus all my attention here. And then this is going to be an okay season. I've got other things to do. What's your framework? What is it, that helps you feel less overwhelmed, less frustrated, and handle everything that your business throws at you?
Yeah. So, I've got several frameworks and I coach to a bunch of them basically with all my clients. And, I started off by saying I use my one-page planner in order to allow me that. And so I really, every morning, and I did it this morning already before we hopped on this call, I sit down and I work through that. I understand what I'm looking for out of these different things. And to be honest, Britt, I don't really believe in a balanced life. I don't really believe in the idea of everybody can have a balanced life because there are seasons. And I mean, can you have a balanced life? I think you can, but can you have a balanced day every day? No. And this is the thing that I think we need to maneuver and massage, like we were just talking about that sort of stuff. The biggest thing is that you need to take when it's not crazy busy, you need to take back your time. And if you're finding yourself, and this is where people fall down, if you're finding yourself busy every day and there is no seasonality to it, then what you need to do is you need to put in place what I call the 4 Ps. And you should really start doing this anyway off the bat, but it's more important even when you're finding yourself so busy every single day that you just can't hold it together. And that's when we talked about it earlier, your mental health and your physical health starts deteriorating. And when that happens, you lose your power as a leader. And so you really want to keep that. You want to keep that so focused so that you're able to lead properly. And it really all starts when you look at the 4 Ps, and I'll tell you what they are essentially before we dig into them a little bit. The first one is having the right product mix, whether it's a product or services. And the second one is having the right process. And that's the one that really needs to be honed down when you're feeling overwhelmed. And then the third one is always the biggest one for most people, and it's having the right people in place. And from that perspective, once we align the right product, the right process, and the right people, then we're able to, develop more profit. And we talked a little bit about that as well. When you have a certain amount of profit, you can then start buying other people's time, because there's only 24 hours in a day. You can't buy more and you can't use less, right? There's 24 hours in a day. That's the one thing that's fixed. So if you're using up 23 hours and 59 minutes every single day, then you need to start setting up the processes that are going to allow you to either automate or optimize, or set up a delegation process that you're beginning to hire other people to take that time back, so that you can then use the systems that are going to allow them to do some of what you're doing. And that's a big thing for entrepreneurs. They don't really understand sometimes, especially at the beginning, how to release, how to let things go to other people, and how to hold them accountable, as opposed to you accountable, and you the one that's up all night long worrying about stuff for every single little detail in your business.
Yeah, I definitely struggle with that. As you were talking about it, I'm like, just yes, take. I definitely do. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that, this is my baby, this is something that I have grown from scratch. So
Yeah.
relinquishing the control to it is just a little bit hard. It's hard. But of course, yes, as you said, it's a process. It is vital to grow as well. You need to start delegating work. You need to start keeping other people accountable, just as you said, because you can't do this alone. I mean, it takes a village to grow a business. And I think that you are absolutely right. I want to talk a little bit about people. I really liked that you mentioned one of the P's to be people. What do you think, having the right people does to a business owner? And I don't just mean, the people that we work with. I think in terms of relationships, in terms of the people surrounding us, our mentors. What are your thoughts on that?
So, in the way I present it, basically, I have people scribed down into 3 different areas. Okay, and the right people that surround your business include the ideal client. Okay, who is your ideal client, and who are your ideal team members as number 2, and who are the ideal suppliers. So your clients, your teams, and your suppliers make up the people around you that help you to deliver your promise. Okay, so when you look at that, who's your ideal client? I'm sure you can think back, and well, I'll just ask everyone listening to think back. Who's the best client you've ever had? I'm sure you know their name. You can think of them right now. You can see their face, because that's the best client you've ever had. Maybe you're still dealing with them. Awesome. Maybe your business is just a one-time thing, but you're thinking back and you're saying, she was awesome, or he was awesome. And I wish I could have 1,000 more of those people. Write down on a list all of the qualities that you admired about that person. Take the time. Soon as pause the episode. If you're listening to this at your desk, actually do it now. And then take another sheet of paper. Who's the worst? I'm sure you actually remember their name too. Some of the people in the middle, you might not remember their names, but you probably remember the worst, and you probably remember the best. Do the exact same thing for the worst. What did you not like about that relationship? Why don't you ever want to go there again? What were all the pitfalls, all the problems, all of the issues, all of the mired down frustrations of dealing with that client? Write them all down. Then what you want to do is, anytime you're dealing with a new prospect, you want to lay them in on that framework. And basically, you're going to make a chart from 1 to 10 or 1 to 12. And you're going to lay that all out and say, where does this person lie in this chart? And you're going to basically, always be pushing for that ideal client side of things, the one that's actually the 10 out of 10. And you're understanding them better than as you bring them on board, you're understanding, and you can start developing some processes around how early detection is going to let you understand understand what this client is going to be like down the road. And I mean, if it's a retail client, like for us with shoe stores, it's a little bit harder to do that because they're just kind of coming in, getting what they need and then leaving. But if you're having sort of deeper relationships with people, this is a really good exercise to do. I mean, we still do it, on the quick, because we can do that. We've sort of developed understanding the proper questioning, all of those things go into your process. We talked about process a while ago in the questioning of bringing on somebody, and all of those questions can be tweaked and figured in your process so that you're actually getting a better client. And when you have a better client, you have less frustration, less overwhelm, more profit, and all of these different things. And that aligns better too. So the ideal client is a really interesting piece of the right people, because you want to be working with the people that bring you up, give you energy, and instead of pull it all down, drain it, where you feel after a conversation, you're going, oh my God, that was, a 15-minute conversation that felt like 4 hours. Those are the ones that take your health down, that take your whole team down, right? And then the next piece is the ideal team. And you can really do that same process with your team members, all the team members you've had. Who's the worst one? Who's the best one? And when you're hiring, you're setting up the processes around how to get more of the best one. How are they a cultural fit? How are they going to, deliver your promise that you're communicating through your mission, through your guiding principles that we talked about earlier, developing all of that sort of stuff. So what are their key actions? What are their key, all of those different things? And can they live up to what you want them to live up to within your business so you can deliver back this promise? So the ideal, you can do the same thing with your ideal team members, and you can do the same thing with all of the suppliers that help you deliver your promise to your customer. In our case, all the different brands. So we have multitude of brands in our stores. I actually have a spreadsheet basically that we put them through, essentially all of our different suppliers, as to who we want to deal with and who we don't. And do we deal with some we don't want to deal with? Well, sometimes you have to in order to, deliver your promise. But that doesn't mean that you're not thinking in the back of your mind, as soon as I can move this one out, I'm going to move it out, right? And that's part of the process of reducing frustration, because now I know that this one's the problem, and we need to start developing some systems that are going to help me around this problem. And if you don't sort of acknowledge that sort of stuff, then you're just letting fate dictate the future again. You're kind of going back to that, just let it happen, as opposed to be thinking about these things. And that's our job as a leader, is to think about these problems and the solutions around them, instead of actually thinking about the day-to-day type, sort of putting out the fire type things. Those are the things we want to let other people deal with, because there's already systems and processes in place. We don't need to look after that. We've already developed those. Those were done last month, last quarter, last year, 10 years ago. And we can actually let those things go to other people who understand what it is we're trying to develop. So that's, when business owners still want to deal with the minutia, that's the problem, right? If you're dealing with the minor things in your business instead of letting other people handle it, other people, your team actually wants the responsibility to do that stuff. They want to feel a part of the decision-making process. You need to let them, release and let them have that. And you can move on and upwards into some of these bigger things that we're talking about. And that's the idea of growth. And it's a big thing for a lot of entrepreneurs to release those things, because one, they feel as though if they don't know the answer, they're looking stupid to either their team or to their clients or to their suppliers. It's like, well, I don't have the answer, and I should, because I'm the owner. Well, if your business is at that stage, sometimes it's actually, you look like a better leader if you basically say, you know what, I don't have the direct answer to that, but I have somebody in place that owns that. And, go talk to Sheila, and Sheila actually looks after all of that stuff, because I've put her in place. She's the person. She can handle it. She'll have all your questions and all of that sort of stuff. And really they're saying, wow, that person really has it under control. and that's an interesting piece when you start looking at that. It's like, no, that person's got it, this person's got it, we've put together, and I mean, I can find the answer for you because I know the levels of accountability within my business, but I might not have the actual answer because I have somebody else in place who owns that accountability, and that's an important piece.
Yes, I think that's a very valid point because personally, I mean, I think that that fear is always there, that people might think lesser of you if you don't have an answer. But from a very young age, I think this is something that my parents have always made sure I understand, is that if I don't know something, I just have to say I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't need to know everything because there's a lot that I don't know. And I think that that is something that I have carried on as a business owner as well. If even if my client, they ask me something that's a little out of my area of expertise and I'm not 100% sure of it, I'll say, okay, I am not the expert on that, but I will find you the expert on that. And I think that that is such a relief on my shoulders as
mm,
well, to accept that, no, I don't know that. That is not my area of expertise. And I really think that a lot more business owners should start feeling that way, that it is not on you to have all the answers, but you should know where to go to get your answer.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think, Prit, when you look at this sort of thing, a friend of mine, his name's Ari Meisel, he has this term called the external brain. And, I love the idea of the external brain because when we look at all the processes in our business, there's just a ton of different processes in our business, right? But those processes are aligned to alleviate these sort of things and to automate them as much as you can. But when you're doing that, your processes, take them out of your head, move them into your external brain, which could be your manual for business, could be a G drive, it could be a Trello board, it could be sort of any sort of way of process flow within your team. You're moving it out of your head and into a system. And when you're doing that, you're alleviating all of that out of there. And you're putting within each operational piece, you're putting somebody's name beside it. You're putting somebody's, their title beside each of those different things. This person's in charge of this person's in charge of that. And how does that flow? And I like the idea of having, instead of an organizational chart, having an accountability chart. And when you're looking at the accountability chart, it's always very simple to then know this particular question is answered at this level. And what I do as the leader then is always, if people are trying to ask me that, I always say, did you ask Joanne? Did you ask Mark? Whatever the case is first, so that you're training all of those people. Don't be asking me because I'm not the one who's directly accountable for that sort of stuff. And that's a process in itself, right? When you think about all these different processes and aligning those processes properly and holding the right people accountable for you, you're already starting to reduce the frustration and overwhelm. You're already starting to move yourself up into what we call the owner's box, really, in around your idea of management, where you can actually create a turnkey business so that most of the things are happening without your direct involvement. And that's where you want to be in most cases, so that you can dig in when you have to dig in. If somebody's off sick, if somebody's away on vacation, if some, all those things, you can dig back down in and help out and do their position when you need to. Because all of the systems, and you just look back at the book and it's like, okay, I haven't done this in a year, but all my systems are here. It's not frustrating at all. I've got it all. I'll remember how to do it. I just don't need to do it every day anymore.
I think that's a fantastic point. I really like the concept of an owner's box. I think that even just picturizing that, yes, there is an owner's box and that's the position I need to get to, even though I may not be there right now. I may not have the processes in place, or the people and the product and the profit, but
Mm-hmm.
that's my end goal. That's where I need
Yeah.
to get. Just having that in my mind, I think definitely is very transformative in terms of my thought process. So I really like that concept. And, coming almost to the end of this podcast episode, Pete, if you have like 3 actionable tips that my audience can just get ready and start implementing. I know we talked about the 1-page planner. But other than that, 3 actionable tips for them.
Yeah, I think we already gave them, and we'll just reiterate them
We
again.
did.
Take those sheets that we talked about, your best and worst client, your best and worst team member, your best and worst supplier. You can do the exact same thing when you go into your processes. So dig out your processes. The ones that you haven't used in the last year that you think are no longer there, take them out of the operations manual. Get rid of them. Use the 80-20 rule, where you're just getting rid of those things that you don't use with all your processes. Clean up your process book is what I'm saying. Do the same with your product mix. How many of the products have you been offering for years and years and years that really aren't bringing you what they once did? Is it time to release some of those, let them go, let other people deal with that so that you can focus on the ones that truly are? Your products, your services, all of those things that you're offering. You want to assess all of these things. So three A words here for you, for your products, your process, and your people. You want to assess them all. You want to advance them all. And you want to have accountabilities beside each of one of those. So when you take that, whether it's, who's in charge of your product or service, you want to assess what it is, clean it up a little bit by advancing it, clean it up and advance it, make it even better than it ever was before, and then place an accountability beside it. Who's in charge? When you start doing that, you elevate yourself. You reduce the frustration. You give that accountability to somebody else, and most often, they rise to the occasion because they actually want it. If they're part of your cultural team, they're part of your right mix, they're part of your ideal team piece in that people part of the business that we talked about, they're going to want that. And that's an interesting concept for a lot of entrepreneurs, because a lot of them think that people don't want it, but they actually do. And when they do, when they're the right cultural alignment, and when they do want that stuff, you've got their loyalty and you've got their trust, because you're giving them the accountability, and they're like, wow, I really feel part of this. And that's when your team starts to build and you're starting to really grow this thing. And it's like, this feels good. It's exciting.
I personally have tried out the ideal client thing, because as a marketer, that has definitely been the first few things that we learned in marketing. And I applied that to my business when we first started out. I knew the client that I did not want to work with, and I knew that the kind of client that I did want to work with. And of course, initially when I first started out, I had to work with the not so ideal clients.
Yeah.
And I think that just made my list even more solid. But, I think that people, like a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, think that they don't have control over the clients who come to them, or, the people that they have to work with. But I think that is false. I think that
I do too.
when you start becoming more clear with who your ideal client is, you start being very clear with your messaging. You start being very clear with your own body language of what you accept and do not accept. And you also start attracting the right audience, the right ideal, the target audience for your business. So I personally, I've tried your ideal client method, and it works. It definitely does.
Oh my gosh.
Being very clear about what you want and don't want, who you want to work with, who you don't want to work with. I think that, I think it's come to a point where I just have to talk to the person face to face, and I know right off the bat if I'm going to be working with them or not, because, the lists are so clear in my head right now. But it takes time to get there. It definitely does.
And when you were talking about, they're clear in your head, here's the biggest thing that I'll pose back to you. Have you written those down so that they can be clear in anyone else that works in sales for you as well? And, that's an interesting thing when you're starting to release this stuff. As entrepreneurs, a lot of stuff's very clear in our heads, but it's not clear to everybody else on our team just because it's clear in our heads. And that's when we need to write, what are the questions you're asking? What are the different things? All of these things, we're laying this out to create clarity. And our job as leaders is exactly that. Communicate clarity every day. And when we communicate clarity around our guiding principles, around all of these things, around our service offering, around our marketing, around our people, the client, around our process, when we're creating clarity and when we're developing that every day and we're always tweaking it, it has to start somewhere. But then we're always tweaking it because there is no perfect process, but we're always trying to perfect our processes. And we're always trying to perfect those different things. But it doesn't mean it's ever going to be perfect. It's a never-ending battle, and that's okay. But the idea is you need to start these things so that you can actually craft it. And as you're crafting these things along the way, they just get better and better and better. And when that happens, the frustrations start going down. You know how to deal with these fires when they come. It's like, oh yeah, we already have a process for that. Here it is. And other people that are on your team already take it off your plate because they already know how to deal with it. And it never even gets to you as a leader a lot of times. So that's an interesting thing when you start working with those. And but for us, we need to take it out of our leadership. We need to take it out of our own brains and use what we talked about a bit earlier, your external brain, your process books, all of the different things, having those systems in place, automations where possible, or other people that are doing the accountabilities so that it's elevating us and allowing us to have a turnkey business, which is what we all really want in businesses. Well, I won't say we all want it, but most of us do.
Oh, that's amazing, Pete. I really like that. Yes, I think a huge part of, me as a business owner has been documenting my journey. It has,
Awesome.
Writing the date and then writing what I thought today. And then if I tweaked it at some point, analyzing that. And I think that what you're saying is also very important, that it might be in my head, but it also needs to be on paper. And someday, it's going to be passed on to my sales or marketing team. And I have to keep that in mind as well. So that's actually very, very interesting. As much as I've documented for myself, I've not thought about documenting it for someone else, for a team that will come into play at some point in the future, because that's where I'm heading. So I think that's a very interesting thought, and it's definitely something that I will implement right after this podcast episode. So thank you for that.
And you don't have to write it down. For those of you who aren't sort of the writing type people, there are great tools, and we're on one right now. We're on Zoom, and there's another one that I use a lot. It's called Loom, Loom. And with Loom, it's videos. So if I have I'll draw something out and I'll do a little Loom video so that I have it, it's captured. I can go back to it. I can share it with my friends or my team or whatever the case is. So I use Loom a lot for that exact thing, just to get your idea out of your head onto, I use an iPad, I'll write down on the iPad, but do a little Loom video around a graphic or an idea or a thought so that I can just get it out of my head and into that framework, so that, because not always do we have time to sit down and write everything down, but we usually can spend 5 minutes or 3 minutes to do a quick Loom video and come back to it at a later date. And that's okay too. The idea is just get it out of your head and into some sort of external brain, like we were chatting about, whether it's a video or whether it's your journal or whatever the case is, because most entrepreneurs, we have squirrel brains, and it's like, oh my gosh, the next idea. Oh my gosh, the next idea.
My God,
but if you don't actually get the ideas, they get lost.
Absolutely. This is so true. For me, more so than writing, I usually have a voice recorder because I have thoughts like in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. I wake up and then there's a thought in my head and then I fall asleep and then I don't remember it anymore. So I immediately just voice record and then I kind of hear it in the morning to see if I was making sense or not. But
that's a great tool.
Voice recording also helps. And it's there on, I think every phone has like a voice recording app. That you can just download and just start recording. So
and just transcribe it, right?
Yep, absolutely. So Loom, and then we have Zoom. We also have any voice recording apps on your phone as well. Get it out of your head, is what Pete says. And I'm definitely going to take that advice. Now, Pete, if somebody were to be looking for you for more help, more expertise, and more guidance, how do they reach out to you?
Easiest way is just to Google Simplifying Entrepreneurship. I know it's a long one, but Simplifying Entrepreneurship is the name of my business. I have a podcast too, and it's called Simplifying Entrepreneurship, where we share these kind of tips and tools and things every week as well. And, my name is Pete Mohr. I'm on LinkedIn. Instagram, all of those places, or you can email me at pete@mohr.coach. That's mohr.coach. So pete@mohr.coach if you want to just reach out to me by email.
Alrighty. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast. I'm really, really excited for my listeners to be listening to this. If you guys have been listening all the way up until here, thank you so much. This is Pete and I signing off for today. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.